misinformation.
If I'm going to get bad news, I want it from him because he's very handsome. Dr. Irwin Redlenner joins us now. MSNBC medical expert. Dr. Irwin Redlenner.
Here he became Dr. Doom.
Dr. Irwin Redlenner is the founding director of the National Center for Disaster Preparedness and senior research scholar.
Dr. Doom.
Hi. Good morning, Dr. Doom.
Well, hello there, Miss Stephanie. How are you?
That must have sent a shiver up your doctor leg, that little exchange there, because this is what you've been doing, we've all been doing for years now, is trying to fight this I don't even know what to call it anymore, this COVID misinformation, just this nonsense, right?
Well, it's one of the most frustrating things I've seen in my career, and this goes not just for me, but for most actual doctors and scientists, that this hoax basically was perpetrated on the American people by people who had no idea what they were talking about, who are pathological conspiracists, and just caused trouble and some large number of deaths. We had almost 1.2 million deaths out of 103 million cases of COVID in the United States, and people say as much as a third of those deaths were caused by people who rejected science, who bought into MAGA, who listened to the absolute nonsense that was being perpetrated. But what happened, Stephanie, that is so concerning, and we have to figure out how to manage, is the social media reinforcement of stupidity.
Yeah. It was everywhere this week. Woody Harrelson, God love him as an actor, but there he is, on SNL, right? Like sort of, and I didn't even watch the whole thing, but just, it's like anti-vaccine nonsense. I saw a clip of him talking about how Big Pharma was trying to stop you from getting ivermectin and hydroxychloroquine. I mean, like it's some conspiracy other than they don't work against COVID, right?
Well, they don't work. But things have changed with social media too, because it used to be that you'd have to hammer the point home on social media to a receptive audience to buy into something that was nonsensical. But people have gotten so used to getting everything they need to know from social media, no matter how extreme. One little viewing of somebody who's a social media quote unquote star, and suddenly they believe it like it's gospel. And this is a really dangerous time, but I think we need some very smart people who will know how to aggressively deal with social media misinformation. This is something that's
I read
very troubling.
Earlier in the week, kind of a depressing thread from Seth Abramson, but just about our level of, infection and death. It's just off the charts. I mean, we're having still a 9/11 a week, right? 3,000 people a week. And he basically was just saying, Trumpism won. There's still only 15% of us even fully vaccinated, on this issue, was his point, is that we are, I can't remember, he was, comparing us to Spain or whatever, that we just, and I know we have this conversation every week. I just don't know what you do about it now. We were talking about there's some festival in Kentucky. There's a measles outbreak because people are actively now not getting vaccinated or vaccinating their children. I mean, what is your take on it?
Well, this is where we are, and the other thing is, we're reading about, at least in the medical literature, about cases of bird flu that are arising around the world, and they're destroying millions and millions of domestic fowl, chickens and so on, and this is going to be, if goodness knows, if we get another pandemic of something, and we have another wave of horrendous conspiracy theories and stupidity, we're going to end up in a lot of trouble. So it's, we're worried about the stupidity around COVID, but it may be well generalized when we get other kinds of medical problems and other kinds of medical threats. And this is where we really have to be worried. In some ways, we need to preemptively try to deal with this so that we don't have this problem the next time there's a pandemic. What makes me a little worried is that Donald Trump has 45% support
Yeah.
among Republican voters right now. He's a viable candidate
Yeah.
for president
Well,
again.
that's what I meant
Oh
about
my
on
God.
the issue of COVID. Just Trumpism won. Forget whether he wins again. It's this
I know, but
dumbassery. It's this
it did
anti-vax.
win.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
on top of Trumpism,
Yeah.
Trump himself is a contender, which suggests something pretty awful about the American public. I hate to say it.
Yeah.
Just man,
Yeah, yeah. Doc, the latest, nonsense is this lab leak, this whole the origins of COVID thing. I just wanted to get your take, because even the coverage of it, I'm okay. Because I look at it, I'm like, okay, so 4 agencies say it's a natural occurrence, right? 2 say with very low confidence they think it could be a lab leak. 2 other agencies don't know yet. So, but for the life of me, Doc, I don't understand what difference it makes. Right? No one thinks that China
yeah.
did it on purpose, whatever it is. But
And Fauci said a couple of days ago, we may never know
right.
where it started. All right, well, there you have it. So we could keep, browbeating ourselves about where it came from and who was right and who was wrong. We're actually never going to have enough information to establish with 100% certainty. It may have come from a lab leak. It may have. It may have come from the meat markets and whatever they are in
wet
parts
markets.
of China or elsewhere. We're just not going to know, and I'm trying to understand what difference it makes.
Yeah, that's
Except
what I'm
that,
saying. I don't. And Fauci was on record long ago as saying he's open to it. That the preponderance is natural occurrence, but from the wet markets. But he's open to it. But again, it's just that it is depressing that that's become the political football that still is going to prevent us from even stopping. Obviously the emergency is not over with COVID.
No, it's
and
not
I don't know.
over even.
Yeah.
We have almost 3,000 people in ICUs around the country, and at least 23,000 people hospitalized. This is an active threat still, and people are assuming or thinking or hoping that it's
Yeah.
over, and it isn't.
Well,
And
Senator James Inhofe just retired because from the Senate because he has long COVID. And he actually, and he was a COVID denier, voted against COVID relief, and he actually said there's a lot of other people in the Senate that won't talk about it, because this is so ridiculous.
It is ridiculous, but I think the fact that it became political in a hurry because stupidity was emanating, and then it had to be refuted, emanating from the White House, had to be refuted, and all of a sudden the lineup was a bunch of people on the side of conspiracy theories and ignorance, and another bunch of people were trying to be R's versus D's. We have this conflict that's not going away anytime soon.
And this other study just came out talking about, was it whatever, doubles your chance of heart problems, long COVID. I mean, it's just, I don't know how much more evidence we need. My girlfriend just went to a professional thing. She was literally the only one wearing a mask. They were making fun of her. She was joking with them about, you're the germy ones. Well, sure enough, someone just tested positive for COVID. That was at this, this event. I mean, this is unfortunately, we're just at a place where I don't know how you turn it around. Do you?
No, I don't know. But, the other thing about, somebody goes to an event and no one's wearing masks, and you get a couple of people or however many people that get COVID. What we don't ever know is how many vulnerable people, those people who went to the meeting, actually infected.
Yeah.
Older people with pre-existing conditions or immune deficiencies. They go home and here you go. And there's a hidden exposure that happens from forgetting to be cautious about a still active threat amidst us. And it's a real problem, Steph. But maybe I think eventually we'll figure out how to combat the social media. Well,
speaking of social media, Russia loves to, as you know, flood our social media with disinformation, not just about COVID, because they'd love for as many Americans to die as possible, but about Ukraine. You said, well, stopping the fighting is the first priority. Making sure Ukraine's vulnerable children don't become the world's largest lost generation is of extraordinary importance. And there's a piece that refers to you a lot, the other threat to Ukraine's future, which is, the thing that you've been over there. I mean, talk to us a little bit about what you're doing. I know you're going back.
Well, it'll be, I guess, my sixth trip to the region there, and we go there because, we're asking the public for support for our work, and it's really important that we make sure that whoever we're sharing these funds with, that people have generously given, they're legitimate expenditures. They're doing what they say they're going to do, and we're kind of the way of, this is Karen and I, of trying to make sure that people have confidence. But what's needed there is a whole lot of support for children who have gotten extreme exposure to psychologically traumatic events, watching cities destroyed, being displaced, having fathers and some mothers actually fighting in combat and missing and so on. This is a highly dangerous time for children, and huge number of those kids in Ukraine and they were moved out of the country for protection with their moms usually, and or to Western Ukraine, leaving the cities they grew up in, and it's very, very heartbreaking.
Yeah.
On the other hand, what's inspiring is the resilience of so many Ukrainians. People, we remember when Zelensky appeared in Congress and gave that very inspiring speech. What I mentioned this to you before, but the people of Ukraine are also inspiring. They want their country to be free, that the democracy needs to thrive. They want the Russians out of there. And the Russians have become terrorists. They're hardly, the traditional military combatants. They're outright terrorists who are, bombing civilian targets, knocking out infrastructure, keeping people freezing
on purpose,
cold.
on purpose, not collateral damage. Yeah.
On purpose.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Doc, thank you for all you do for the children. I was thinking when we were talking about the vaccine stuff, I thought as a pediatrician, this must be, it's like we're watching a national toddler tantrum, aren't we, about vaccines? I mean, that's really what it is. And I just hope we figure out how to calm everyone down here at Chuck E. Cheese.
We need those kids to be healthy and thriving. All of our children here, there, everywhere in the world, and hopefully we'll be making progress over this next year or two. Hopefully.
Yep. And we've linked to your good work as usual. Doc, we'll see you next week. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
There
Bye-bye.
she goes. 20 minutes after the hour. This portion of